All right, so this is our first call for the Konflux Fedora SIG, and people in Konflux community interested in Fedora, people in the Fedora community interested in Konflux. Um, I was just saying a second before we started the recording, maybe we'll go around and do around introductions, introduce yourself, and talk maybe about what you work on and what you're interested in the Fedora plus Konflux space, and we'll go from there. Anybody want to go first? Can I ask Julia, can you go first?
Sure. Yes, so my name is Julia, and of course I work at Red Hat, and I'm responsible for MintMaker, which is a service in a component in Konflux, which is responsible for providing dependency updates in the component in your repo. And I'm very passionate about open source, so I thought it would be nice if we have MintMaker in Fedora too. I'd love to contribute and do my part to support that. But we'll see. As Rob said, I'm here to see what this is going to be about.
Andre, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Andre, and I'm working in image builder team, and we are now migrating to Konflux. That's one interest angle. Second interest angle is that in the future, I think it would be great if Konflux builds disk images. So that's another point of angle, and that I'm interested in looking at it. This and third, and I think the immediate, is that Konflux is now running on console.ui, and we would love to piggyback on that and maybe think about ways how other services can be deployed alongside of Konflux, and for this case, image builder can be deployed in the same UI and figure out how to make it all work together.
Cool. That's great, Andre. Thank you. And I'll do an order of people joining. Andrew, do you want to go next, and then Eric after Andrew?
Sure. I'm Andrew. I work at Red Hat. I am interested in this Fedora SIG because I have no knowledge and experience about RPMs. But I configured a RPM prefetch either earlier this week or last week, so I'm starting to explore, and I'm starting to try and understand the new use cases. And it seems like a really fun challenge to figure out how to make sure this process works within Fedora.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrew. Eric, you want to go?
Sure. So hi, I'm Eric. Also from Red Hat. I'm part of the Konflux team, working in the build component area, and we're responsible for actually prefetching the dependencies or build artifacts, whatever you want to call it. The reason I'm here is to actually stay connected with the larger community and kind of be part of what other expectations might come out of this SIG as to what Fedora's requirements on Konflux are going to be to adopt it.
Cool. Brian, do you want to go next? We're just doing introductions, what you work on, what you're interested in working on in this group, maybe what you're interested in learning.
Sure. I'm Brian, co-founder of Konflux and product manager at Red Hat, and I'm interested in this SIG because it's kind of our first opportunity to get some good feedback from maybe some people that don't work at Red Hat, and hopefully figure out how to grow that outside of this Fedora SIG too to other places in the community.
Cool. Thanks, Brian. I'm processing Julia's request. She asked to share the notes document, which is currently empty, but I'll share it with all of you. There we go. Shared. And I didn't introduce myself. I'm Ralph. I'm co-founder of Konflux, also with Brian, working on the Konflux team at Red Hat. I worked for a number of years in the Fedora community, so I'm interested in this SIG as a combination of two things that I love very much. I think my short-term interest in stuff to do in the SIG is around the infrastructure layer. We are running a Konflux instance for Fedora, and there have been a number of people since we talked about it at Flock, a number of people who are interested in trying to onboard different projects to it for various purposes. Some of them have been successful, and some of them haven't been successful yet. I think I'd like to figure out how we make the work to run that instance sustainable, so that it's not just this extra load on people who are running Konflux instances. That if we can make it automated and streamlined, use Konflux to help maintain that Konflux instance. That's my first primary interest. On that, a couple of things that you guys said struck me. Julie, it's a connection between your interest and mine. We have this infra deployments repo that defines the deployment of the Fedora cluster that's separate from the main infra deployments repo. And one aspect of it is that it currently has no propagation of updates from the upstream installer to it, meaning Renovate is not running to keep the instance of Konflux updated. And that would be an awesome project if we could figure out how to make that work so it's receiving updates. Then it starts to auto-maintain itself. Andre had a question about where does that live? And let me get the link.
Yeah, maybe can we share some resources like repos or
Totally.
I don't know, infrastructures, stuff like that.
I'm gonna share screen, and forgive me, I'm gonna do the inception thing where it shares the meeting and you see yourselves for a minute. Oh no, but wait, I have to unshare because I have to log in first. Apologies, it's first thing in the morning. The short of it is at gitlab.com/fedora/infrastructure. We tried to put it in a place where it would be reasonable for the Fedora infrastructure team to collaborate with us once it stabilizes, and if it was in a more used than it is today, which is just really in a prototype shape. Here's the link in sidebar, and I think if you go there, you won't be able to see anything just yet. But when I look there, because I have rights to be in the group, I see, let's see if we go back up a level. There's Fedora infrastructure, which has an Ansible repo, which is the mirror of the Fedora infra team's main repo for deploying everything in Fedora infrastructure. And then we've got a Konflux group sitting next to it with all the resources needed to deploy the Konflux instance. This is that infra deployments repo. Sorry, yes?
You're sharing Vim.
Oh no, am I? Heavens. Sorry, guys. Is this better?
That is better. Can you make it a little bigger?
I can.
Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. So I'll pop back up a level and say it again. In gitlab.com Fedora infrastructure, there's an Ansible repo here that is a mirror of the Fedora infrastructure team's main Ansible repository that defines everything that they deploy. Sitting next to it is this Konflux group that has 4 repos in it for defining that Konflux deployment. Test repo is just a test repo, so it's really 3. Terraform repo deploys the underlying AWS resources and the cluster. Tenants config, well, I guess before tenants config, infra deployments defines the deployment of the Konflux services on that cluster and configures it to make it a Konflux instance instead of just a cluster. And finally, tenant config is a place for users to come and use a GitOps flow to manage what's in their repo. The infra deployments one, Julia, this is what I was talking about, that there's no automated update. The last update was only two months ago. We should get MintMaker and Renovate running on this cluster to start propagating updates to this repo itself, just like we do for the main infra deployments repo. And when that's working, then I think suddenly things will be moving along here. We have a problem where, because this hasn't updated in 2 months, anybody who onboards to this, the latest task definition updates that they get are going to be at most They won't be any more recent than 2 months ago. So they're getting old task updates. They won't get anything new sent to them because their Konflux instance doesn't know about the new tasks that have been merged in the last 2 months. Meanwhile, the enterprise contract policies are referring to an acceptable bundles list that is moving by tag instead of by digest, which means that the current tasks that are being sent to users won't pass enterprise contract policy because enterprise contract policy is based on the task definitions as they are today, whereas the task definitions supplied to users are based on those from 2 months ago. So I think anybody onboarding right now is going to get a bad experience until we get that fixed.
So you do have, yeah, sorry, Andrew, didn't raise my hand. Yeah, so you do run Konflux, but you do not run MintMaker as part of it. Do I understand correctly?
I mean, just before Flock, we added MintMaker to the mix. So MintMaker is here running as a part of the instance, but it's not configured to update this infra deployments repo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That may not even be how it works for like the Red Hat instances, but we do have something that's propagating updates from, if we look at like the upstream installer, Konflux CI. Here, if this is where all of the main references to the Konflux services are defined, where their latest is. Sorry, when a change merges to one of those services, a reference to it gets updated in this repo by Renovate. Gal's vision for how we manage multiple infra deployment repos involves having Renovate then again propagate the update that has landed here to the infra deployment repo for various downstream consumers, both for Red Hat running our instances in our infra deployment repo and Fedora running Fedora's infra deployments repo, which I was just showing a second ago.
Okay, I see. Yeah, maybe we can do something about it.
Cool.
Can configure this.
Open this repo, I think. It being private makes it difficult, I think, to work with. But I can get you access. We should open it up, I think, as soon as we can.
Sure. Okay, sounds good.
Cool.
And to be precise, this repo doesn't know about any of the latest tasks, and so by default they will fail enterprise contract.
Right.
But any components that are onboarded should be configured with MintMaker because that's deployed to the Konflux instance, and so those repositories should get task updates proposed. It's just that the experience is you onboard, and whenever that next update cycle happens, you're going to get all your tasks being updated.
You know, you're right, and I didn't realize that was the case. I think you're right. That is the way it works.
And like for the Red Hat infra deployments that we use, I think that we might use a MintMaker or Renovate for, I don't know, but we might also trigger a update specifically in the Tecton task that runs on the push for any of the various components or for like any of the pipelines we have. So if we do use that model, we should definitely change it so that we are doing a pull model as well, so that anybody, like you said, anybody who has their own infra deployments can use the same strategy, and we do not have to add additional hooks into that push model to get them working.
That makes sense. Cool. I'm gonna drop screen share.
So do you have, so what are the communication channels? Like, do we have Slack? Do we have a ticketing system? How do we track the work? Or maybe it's too soon.
I don't know. Do you have any recommendations? I think all we have for communication channels defined are what is in the SIG markdown file here. And if we need a ticket tracker for what we're doing, we could use Konflux CI community until that starts feeling overloaded. I don't know. We could use that. We could use the MintMaker's GitHub issue tracker.
Yeah, we can use both. One of, I think either is fine. So we do not have like a Slack channel, right? Maybe
No.
that would be useful.
No. If Fedora is mostly on element matrix, so if we were to use chat, matrix would be preferred, but it is extra. I mean, an extra tab to have open if you're not already using it.
It's okay. It's okay. I think it's fine. Yeah, I think we want to comply to what Fedora is doing.
Yeah. I want to be able to be visible to people in Fedora so that if they become interested, then there's an obvious way for them to connect with what's going on. Andre, you went on camera. Did you want to say something?
Is that deployment including the front end as well, or is
It is. So you had questions about the front end. There is, our front end used to be, I'll throw some links in sidebar. 1 second, I'll pull it up. Our front end used to be driven out of this repo, which was HAC, stood for Hybrid Application Console. It was supposed to be a next generation framework for console.dot, and it was going to be plugin based. Dev was our plugin, because the developer experience was in Hybrid Application Console, and so HAC Dev is the Konflux plugin for that. Turns out that nobody else onboarded to this new framework, and we are the only plugin in a framework of one. So there's currently, I'm not a part of this work directly, but I'll share what I know is that there's an effort to strip away some of the layers of that framework and move the repo to this repo, Konflux CI/Konflux UI. And you had an interest in maybe we can make Image Builder run like Konflux as a part of a console experience. I don't know what this deframeworking effort is going to mean for that. Like if we were still one plugin and a framework, then it feels like it would be natural. We write a similar plugin for Image Builder and it runs in the same framework and we could run those on the same cluster. Now that we're deframeworking, I don't know how thorough that is, right? Is there still an easy way for you to take advantage of some of the chroming here? I don't know, but I can introduce you to some of the people who work on that. I mean, if we just look at the committers on the Konflux CI, Konflux UI repo, those are the people that I would, but look, you can do it just as easily as me. I think GitHub issues there are probably the right place for questions. Right?
I don't know if they've already talked about how plugins will work in the new architecture, but given the core and optional model that we have kind of adopted for components of Konflux, I think it's inevitable that we will do something. You know, otherwise we will basically never be able to have user interface blocks that are specific to optional components.
Right. Now, whether those are all in the same Git repository for the UI, but controlled by configuration flags, like you're turning off this section for this deployment because we don't even have MintMaker versus you have it turned on in some other instance. Or if they're like different Git repos that if they are installed to the system, then they like somehow auto-register themselves with the running UI. That's how HAC was working. It's more dynamic at load time.
Yeah, I think the effort is still alive. It's just not there yet, and it will take a while.
Okay. Andrew, you were talking about building images in Konflux. Do you have a vision of your own on how that should work yet, or is it just something you're interested in? That
Just an idea as of now. Right now, we would like to explore how to get Image Builder to Fedora, so build Fedora images. So that's like a next step, building images in Konflux.
Gotcha. So there's like two ways we might go about it. That in Konflux, everything's a tecton pipeline for building, whether you're building a container or an RPM or something else. If we were going to build a disk image, in fact, we do build a disk image for InstructLab upstream and Red Hat equivalents of InstructLab upstream. We use bootc image builder to take a bootc container image and turn it into a disk image using your guys' tool. So that happens in a tecton task rather than calling out to image builder, a service running somewhere else. For general disk image building in Konflux, we could go one of two ways. We could add tasks that do that same native invocation of some image builder CLI tool to build the image in place in the Konflux task, or call out to some service that runs somewhere else, say running on console for like a Red Hat hosted instance.
Yeah, I think that we know about these two options, and we would like to go to building in place without the service, but it requires some effort to make it available. Right now, you can do just bootc images through that CLI. So yeah, that's why I'm not bringing it up yet here, because we just need to do some internal decisions where we can take the service and where we can take the CLI.
I understand. I didn't know where you were at in the process, so if you guys just need to decide stuff, let us know when you're ready to talk more.
Will do.
Cool.
Right, but who's responsible for the UI now? Is that something that you would like to keep just for Konflux, or would you like to do a console for Fedora? Is that your interest, or would it be interesting to join forces with other services to have a unified UI, at least maybe even more infrastructure pieces, but UI would be the first that I would like.
Think about what does console mean for Red Hat. It's like every service that a customer of Red Hat that's subscribing to Red Hat services can see everything under one unified UI. And if you took that same metaphor, that same paradigm, and applied it to Fedora, so that would be everything that the packager does. But also, I mean, is that everything that like Fedora users do to interact with? It's a really big mission if we wanted to be that broad. So I don't want to be, it's ambitious. I'm cool to be ambitious, but I don't want to be presumptuous, that like Konflux is going to be that Chrome for everything in Fedora infrastructure. So like, do you see what I mean? That's like a yes and a no. I'm happy to try to include image builder as a part of that, but there's probably got to be some limit on that, or at least a bigger conversation with the community.
Yeah. At this point, I was thinking about the services from consoleredhat.com that would like to have an upstream offering to join forces. Later on, we can get more ambitious, but at this point, I would just limit it to those services that are on consoleredhat.com right now and would use the Chroming tooling and are considering upstream offering. And I think there won't be too many at this point.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I'm definitely warm to that. I don't want to speak for the guys who work on the UI itself. So let's go start a thread with them and see if they're open to it also. Andrew, you were asking about RPMs earlier, and maybe we won't get into RPMs today. I will say that I was meeting with teams who were working on building RPMs in Konflux 2 weeks ago at a Red Hat meeting, and they agreed they're going to start up a SIG similar to this one, but not the same one. So the scope of this one will be mostly just about the general usage of Konflux in Fedora, the Fedora instance, and so on. But like the work to figure out how to build and manage the building of many RPMs is going to be spearheaded by a different SIG, but they're going to try and hold their meetings open just like this one, so that I think there'll be probably a different place to plug in for that. And like Eric, for your question was about Fedora requirements, right? I wonder where and how we'll be able to get you that information. There's maybe not anybody here today who's like in a position to speak about Fedora requirements generally, but we can hopefully connect you with that group.
Yeah. I wasn't expecting that to happen today. I mean, my expectation was that this was just an introductory meeting, which would then take off and be maybe an additional one along with the Konflux architecture call, or maybe consume it. I don't know. So I just wanted to be part of it, so that we can catch, be connected with the people as soon as possible when these demands and requirements pop up.
Cool. That makes sense.
And as it relates to RPMs, building RPMs and whatnot, I think that's definitely part of it as well. I don't know if there is a lot of clarity for the potential scope of this SIG. So as that SIG is started up and continues, I think it'll be important to make sure that we can define the envisioned scopes of the SIGs, just so we can maybe direct conversation to the appropriate place where there's going to be more people that are able to discuss them.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Cool.
I want to mention I updated a bit the notes. It's written very badly, but it's there. I'm sure I missed some things. If you guys want to add something, I've added a couple of action items. So maybe if Ralph, you can provide access to the repo. I'm not sure if that's possible. Okay, can you grant us permission, or is there some policy? I don't know, but. And I'll try to see if I can fix Mint Maker in Fedora. Not sure. I'll just have a look at least.
I added a note just now. Thank you, Julia, for doing that for Andra. I think, Andra, you're going to reach out to the Konflux UI team. Cool. Awesome. With that, let's shut it down. Anything else before we go? Thank you, everybody, for coming today. It was a good first meeting. We got another one scheduled in 2 weeks, and let's talk async between now and then. We'll get some stuff done.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.